This is KOOP HD1 HD3 Hornsby, radio for people, not for profit. Welcome to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. Each week, we explore how your library is more than books. The library is knowledge, technology, and inspiration for our community. Hi, this is Kanya Lyons. I'm your host today for Volumes, and we have a very special guest, Vivien Addison. Welcome.
Thank you, Kanya.
And Vivien here is the managing librarian of the St. John branch of the Austin Public Library. So let's get to know you a little bit, Vivien. Are you from Austin, or from where do you hail?
Well, I was born in England, and I moved to Austin after I graduated from college from Ohio. I was living in Ohio.
Neat. Yeah, right before the show, that's right. You were telling me that you were born in England and moved to the States when you were 3. That's really neat. So you grew up in the Ohio area as a kid?
Yeah, Cleveland Heights.
Mm-hmm. Neat. And you came here for undergrad? Or
no,
graduate?
I was actually a dance major in Ohio.
Ooh.
At Ohio University. And when I graduated, I needed my wisdom teeth removed. And my parents had moved to Austin because my dad was working at UT. So I came out to get my wisdom teeth removed and started working at Whole Foods and dancing with people in town and never left.
That's so neat. I never realized we had so much in common. So I also used to work at Whole Foods, and I also used to perform as a dancer a little bit. And now we both work at the Austin Public Library. That's so neat. So Wisdom brought you to Austin.
Wisdom brought me to Austin, exactly.
And so you worked at Whole Foods, and then sort of what inspired you to want to go back to school and become a librarian?
Well, I'm afraid it was really a practical thing. My mother invited my husband and I to dinner. Mm-hmm. And we had by that time we had a small child, and I was dancing and making a very lucrative, I think $3.50 an hour if you counted rehearsal time. I mean, I was paid to dance with a company, but it was a very minimal pay. And she said, "You two might like to think about graduate school." Uh-huh. And she actually was a cataloging librarian.
Oh,
and she
neat.
suggested library school. And I was a very strong library user as a child, and as an adult. I loved reading, and it just made sense. So my husband and I both went to library school together.
Oh, that's so sweet. And your husband actually also works at the Austin Public Library, if I may.
He does
share
indeed.
That information.
He has worked there for years. I've only worked at Austin Public Library for about 6 years, but.
Yeah, so you were a school librarian before you came to the public library world, right?
Yeah, and before that, I was actually a special librarian. I was worked for the Texas Department of Human Services in their library, not as a professional librarian, but as a paraprofessional. And I also worked for the Austin Board of Realtors back in the old days when they had a collection and they had a librarian. And a lot of what I did was helping realtors examine plat maps. This is prior to the internet,
right? And
use microfiche and
Neat.
that kind of thing. And then I became a school librarian and went and got a teaching certificate. And
that's so cool.
Yeah.
So would you talk a little bit about sort of like the difference between those different types of library jobs, like a special? We don't want to go too deep into this, but I'm just curious, like the difference between being a librarian for a special collection versus being a school librarian versus being a public library.
Well, in the special collection, I had a very highly selected population of users. So at the Department of Human Services, it was, child abuse. There was a lot of material about child abuse, a lot of materials about nutrition. I was in charge of the nutrition education training collection, which was child care providers and schools used those materials to teach nutrition to parents and their staff. And so it was a very sort of highly selected set of users, and there was more distance because a lot of what you did was remote. You would, do things by phone. At the Austin Board of Realtors, again, I was only dealing with realtors. As a school librarian, you're a member of a very busy community. The pace is absolutely frenetic. I mean, at one point I had 1,000 students in a very, very highly mobile school where children would enroll and disenroll every day. And I was in charge of not only the school library, but all the technology for all the classes. I did we did a morning news show with the children reading the announcements over the intercom or doing it closed circuit over the TV. I mean, literacy events, daily classroom lessons. It was just very, very intense.
And diverse, it sounds like a lot of different stuff.
And then the relationship with the community is that you are, everybody is responsible for all the children. Everybody is responsible for all the learning. So your relationship to the community is more of like, in loco parentis. So you're responsible for the children. And it's slightly different at the public library. In the public library, there's a little more distance between your users. You're part of the community, but your responsibility to the children, you have to step back in a way that you can't be quite as directive as you can with children in a public school setting. But it's, I love being in a public library, and I really enjoy it. The pace is different, the clientele is more diverse in ages and needs, so I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, and we were talking, I guess, earlier before the show that in your 6 years at the library, you've worked at 2 different branches, and I guess now you're managing the St. John branch, but before that, you worked at the Southeast branch, and so those of us that work at the library know that every branch is unique. It has its own personality. It serves a unique community of people. So today, I would like to kind of talk a little bit about, get to know the current branch that you're working at. Let me real quick, if you're just joining us, this is Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show on KOOP 91.7 FM, and we're streaming at koop.org. There's details about this show on the library's website at library.austintexas.gov/volumes. And so we're talking to Vivien Addison, who is the managing librarian of the St. John branch. And I want to get to know a little bit about what makes the St. John branch so unique. Because again, like all the branches are unique, but what is its special flower characteristics?
So I think we're unique of the unique. I think we get that designation. So we are the only Austin Public Library that is in a joint facility. We're actually in a building owned by the Austin ISD. It was built in 2002 with the idea that it would be a community center, sort of a wraparound center. And we have an elementary school, which is Pickle Elementary School, in one side of the building, and the other side has Austin Public Health, which is Shots for Tots, Big Shots, Women, Infant, and Children, the WIC offices, neighborhood services. There's a food pantry. There's the Virginia Brown Recreation Center.
Wow.
And there's a senior citizen activity program and lunch that goes Monday through Friday. There's a food distribution every week, and then a larger one once a month. And then there's the St. John Branch Library. So inside the building, there's actually 2 libraries. There's a school library that serves basically the school community, and then the public library that serves both the school and the neighborhood community.
Wow. That's amazing. To have all those resources right there together. That's a really unique concept. Well, I want to dive into this a little bit deeper, but we're actually going to take a break and listen to an audio clip, and then we'll come back and dive right back into this conversation. So we're going to actually listen to an excerpt that comes from a 1943 film that is called Austin, the Friendly City. This film was made by the Austin Chamber of Commerce, and the rights were transferred over to the Austin History Center back in 2006. For those of you that don't know, the History Center is part of the Austin Public Library. It's our local archive, and so much more. So the film was preserved and digitized in 2008 in partnership with a grant from the National Film Preservation Foundation. So after this clip, we'll finish our discussion with Vivien Addison, managing librarian at the St. John branch.
Let's meet these folks, for they represent the hundreds of families who make Austin their home every year. They might even be you. This is Betty Smith and her mother. Betty can hardly wait to make new friends at high school. Billy and his dad are real pals, and they have been talking about fishing trips on the lakes and so many other adventures ahead. Well, it's been a long, hard drive, and no one is more glad than Father as he wipes the sweat from his brow. Everybody lend a hand to get unloaded. Oops, well, you almost made it, and we know just how you feel. Within a month after the arrival, other new folks in Austin are given a cordial reception by the Austin Chamber of Commerce. Best of all, they get a big sack full of Austin products that is welcome in anybody's pantry. The chairman makes everyone feel right at home, and then he asks you just to relax for an interesting picture trip around the city. Off go the lights, and a picture of the magnificent state capitol building flashes on the screen. This structure, central landmark of the city, was completed in 1888 out of native Texas granite. Lacking cash, the state paid for it with 3 million acres of public land. What a thrill for the Smith family as they are warmly greeted by the governor himself. And Billy's breath almost stopped as the governor's 10-gallon hat was placed upon his head. From the central arch of the Capitol, looking south, you see Congress Avenue, central business thoroughfare, and the principal business section of the city. The governor's mansion, lovely example of the true lines of the southern colonial home, has been the home of every Texas governor since 1853. Many visitors daily explore the interior of the mansion, which contains numerous articles of great historical interest. Chief among these is undoubtedly the Sam Houston bed, slept in by the great patriot and statesman of Texas history. There now, for Billy the temptation is just too great, but his watchful sister knows what to do. As a seat of state government, Austin has a number of state buildings, inasmuch as the Capitol long ago was outgrown. The State Highway Building is the nerve center for the construction and maintenance of Texas highways. The Walton Building at one time was the county courthouse, but was converted to the use of several state departments. The State Office Building provides space from several major departments of the state government. The State Health Department recently moved into these spacious new quarters, where they can more adequately serve the health needs of the state. For example, this traveling dental unit makes dental care possible in areas where it would otherwise be lacking. Other types of traveling units, together with the most modern methods of treatment, bring better health to the people within our far-flung boundaries.
My name is Blair Parsons, and I'm a librarian at the Central Library. Each week I highlight a selection of programs for adults that are happening around the Austin Public Library, and our full list of programs may be found on the library's events calendar. This Friday, August 24th, the Austin Public Library will host 2 after-hours adult programs, one at the Menchaca Road branch and one at the Carver branch. The Menchaca Road branch library attendees may experience the Ultimate Podcast Evening, which will include a live podcast recording of Adult Story Hour and a panel of local podcasters. The evening will also provide attendees with an opportunity to experiment with podcasting recording equipment, create a podcast album cover, and sign up to get a professional headshot for your webpage. The APL Makes Podcasting Evening is this Friday night, August 24th from 6:30 to 9 o'clock at the Menchaca Road Branch Library. Also Friday night, the Carver Branch Library will host author Evan Narcisse for a discussion of his upcoming graphic novel, Rise of the Black Panther. A limited number of the graphic novel will be available for purchase, and the event will include an author signing. The program begins at 7 o'clock, Friday night, August 24th, at the Carver Branch Library.
Hey there, Austin. Teen Program Specialist Michael Harley from the Downtown Central Library here. Enjoyed Black Panther this past year? We did too. That's why the Austin Public Library is thrilled to be hosting an evening with Evan Narcisse, local comic book creator and writer of Rise of the Black Panther. Evan will be appearing at the Carver Branch on Friday, August 24th at 7 p.m. for a special after-hours discussion and book signing. Copies of Narcisse's graphic novels will be available for purchase on a first-come, first-served basis. More details on Meet the Author, Rise of the Black Panther, and additional programs can be found at library.austintexas.gov/events.
This is Alana Graves, the youth librarian at the Carver Branch. Summer may be coming down to an end, but there are still free library events for kids. This week, the Carver Branch is hosting a special after-hours author visit with Evan Narcisse, the author behind the new graphic novel series called Rise of the Black Panther. Black Panther fans of all ages are invited to participate in a discussion as well as get their graphic novel signed by the author. A limited amount of graphic novels will be available for purchase, first come, first serve. This author visit will take place on Friday, August 24th at 7 p.m. at the Carver Branch. Details at library.austintexas.gov.
You're listening to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show on Co-op 91.7 FM and KOOP.org. Radio for people, not for profit.
Support comes from East Side Pies, local pizza with local ingredients. 3 locations around Austin: East Side off Rosewood, Airport and 53rd, and Anderson Lane. Take out or eat in. Online ordering now available at eastsidepies.com.
This month, Co-op recognizes the International Day for Remembrance of the Slave Trade and its abolition to remind us of the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade. By 1789, the French colony Saint-Dominique was the world's most profitable colony. On August 23, 1791, a slave revolt began, and by 1804, more than 100,000 slaves had died fighting the combined military might of the United States and the forces of the 3 great colonial empires, the French, British, and Spanish. On January 1, 1804, the only successful slave revolt in world history prevailed, declaring its independence as Haiti.
Hi, welcome back to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. Right before those lovely announcements, we listened to an excerpt from a 1943 film called Austin, the Friendly City. Yeah, things were a little bit different back then. So the digitized 31-minute film can be watched on the Austin History Center's YouTube channel. So it's just a search away. So now we're going to get right back into our conversation with Vivien Addison, who is the managing librarian over at the St. John branch. And we just started talking about what is so unique about the branch. And you were telling me about all the facilities all of the different organizations that share that facility. And then there's some other really cool stuff, the Realia and the Threshold Project. Can you talk about those?
Yeah. So they recognized the contributions of the neighborhood when they had to tear down homes. They tore down 17 homes to create this combined building. And so they have like 15 acres. And they wanted to honor the neighborhood people because by creating something they call the Threshold Project. So at every location where there was the front door or the threshold of the homes, they have placed a marker. And the interesting thing is that the building is actually has an interior curved hallway that stretches the entire length of the building. I mean, it's incredibly long. It goes all the way from the public library through the building up through the end of the elementary school. And so some of these thresholds are placed inside the building, and some are placed outside the building. And the grid is very different the building is, has a curved, whereas the grid was, rectangular. And so you find these thresholds in the middle of the hallway and outside before you come in the building, in the most incongruous kind of places. But if you look down, you'll see, and it gives the actual street address of those buildings. And then the other thing is that they envisioned this interior court hallway as a sort of a street that ran down the entire building, and they created 44 art niches made out of, with a glass front. And they had two artists, Steve Wyman and Beverly Penn, who 15 years ago were paid through the Art in Public Places to, honor the community. And what they did was they collected realia. So they went around to the demolished homes and they found objects. They found little toys. And they also solicited donations from the neighborhood. So the niches each contained something that was important to the neighborhood. Like one contains photographs, old photographs from some of the homes. Oh, wow. One has little sort of egg-shaped paper things, and each paper thing contains a thumbprint of one of the students in the first year the school opened. There's also pencils that they found. There's samples of dirt, the different dirts. Mm-hmm. There's like part of an old swing. There's beads. And so as you travel up the hallway, you can see some of these. Some of them you can only visualize from inside the elementary school. But the hallway rises as it curves around, and by the time you get to the end, you've sort of had a glimpse of the neighborhood.
Wow.
And we were very lucky, actually. The artists came back thanks to Carlos Rodriguez Brando, who is also an employee of the St. John Branch Library and our art specialist. And he wears many hats, but he had the great idea to invite them to come back, and they did. And they did a tour up the hallway with neighborhood residents, and they talked about the history of the building. So.
Wow. So it's only been there for 15 years, is that right?
Correct, yes.
Wow, I didn't realize that. That's neat.
And it uses rainwater collection to cool the tower. It's one of the most energy efficient school buildings and library buildings. And it's got a lovely curved metal roof. It's quite a striking building. We sometimes get architecture students in to take a look.
Yeah, I've been there a couple of times, and I'm always like, wow, this is just, it is very unique. And the library itself has such a high ceiling. It just feels so open and expansive. Yeah, and it seems like that library and just that whole facility is really heavily used and cherished by the community. So I'm curious to know a little bit about that relationship that you have with between the public library there and the community. What kinds of programs are offered? What kinds of questions do people ask about? Kind of what is a day in the life at the St. John Branch? We're a snapshot of a week there, maybe.
Yeah, well, we, because we're in the same building with a school, we have a lot of children come after school. Mm-hmm. And we have a very active youth program with the kids use the laptops. There's STEM activities, science, technology, math activities. We have story times for the younger ones. We're very lucky. We have a wonderful person on staff, Daisy Guzman, who offers bilingual computer classes. She's our tech-savvy, computer-savvy person, and she does a great job teaching people with very little digital literacy skills, how to use a computer, and she's, of course, also bilingual. We have Talk Time on Saturday, which is a chat group for people who are practicing their English skills. So one of the things is that the apartment complex across the street is used by Immigration Services. So we are now getting we're getting a group of individuals from Afghan who are living there. So we have speakers of Pashto who come into the library. We have a large African-American community because St. John is historically an African-American community. We also have a large Hispanic population. So you hear many languages spoken in our library. I do a senior computer club for some of the senior activity members where we're just learning to use the computers for fun. We play games. We're going to be looking at YouTube videos. We have a weekly yoga class, which one of the lovely things about this building is we do cooperate with the other organizations. So the Recreation Center offers us the space to hold this yoga class. Neat. And we pay for it. And we have a nonprofit called Pure Action Yoga who comes in and teaches a Monday night class at 6:30 in the rec center.
Awesome.
So we've got a lot of stuff going on. So you'll find the library in the morning is quieter. We have people who use us. I mean, I feel like we are the living room for some people who don't have a space or a quiet, organized space at home to just hang out and spend time. And then in the afternoons, of course, after school, we're very, very busy. We're lively, which also equals the noise levels go up.
Right.
And then we quiet down at night again, and we're back to being more of a study space. So.
Well, yeah, libraries are definitely, they say, it's not the same old shush. Libraries are becoming increasingly more active, and the volume has gone up. Not everybody's happy about that.
Yeah. Well, and it's a lively space. We have no interior walls. Mm-hmm. And part of the building's energy efficiency is that there's a lot of concrete in that building, a lot of thermal mass. But concrete creates very live sound.
Right.
And we have no interior walls to sort of baffle that sound. So it's lively.
It's lively. Nice. So for those of you who are just joining us, this is Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show on Co-op 91.7 FM, and we're streaming at koop.org. There are details about this show, upcoming shows, stuff like that, our podcast. It's all available at library.austintexas.gov/volumes. So I kind of want to broaden our conversation out a little bit. So we talked about the specific uses that you're getting at your branch and the community that uses it. But I mean, why are libraries important in today's, just sort of a general? And we've got and in a minute, can you tell me why libraries are important?
Yes, definitely. Libraries are important as community centers, as meeting places, as places for quiet contemplation, as resources for print materials, digital materials, as a place to become educated in how to use technology. We do a lot of one-on-one education with people. We assist them in applying for jobs, getting their driving records. I think we're in some ways protectors for some people who are not aware of the dangers and the pitfalls of being on the internet. So we help guide them when they need assistance to safer websites.
And so much more. So real quick, one last quick question. Can you tell me what you're currently reading or what you most recently read that you are willing to share?
I'm right in the middle of a fantastic fable called Hannah Who Fell from the Sky by Canadian author Christopher Meads.
And that looks like a library book.
It does. I'm a library user.
Nice. So that's available at the Austin Public Library collection.
When I'm done with it, yes.
Excellent. We're going to put that up on the library's website where we actually have a BiblioCommons list associated with this show. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you for having me, and good luck in your future endeavors.
Well, thank you so very much. Thanks everyone for listening. Of course, thanks to our librarian, Vivien Addison. Thanks to Federico Pacheco, who is our volunteer. He's also apprenticing today, so he's been pushing all the buttons. And of course, thanks to DJ Harris, who keeps us all going here at Co-op Radio. So stay tuned right now for Rock and Roll Pest Control. Thanks for listening to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. Special thanks to our producer, DJ Harris, and to the musicians who composed and performed our original theme song, Andrew Noble on violin, Kirk Duvall on guitar, and Mike Wheat on percussion. And thanks to you, our listeners. Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show, airs Wednesday afternoons at 2:30 on Co-op 91.7 FM and koop.org. If you catch us mid-show, full episodes and other details can be found at library.austintexas.gov/volumes.